Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are. Welcome to WHAM today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Tuesday, 15th April, 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. China is navigating a complex landscape of trade disputes, technological advancements, and expanding global influence. President Xi Jinping is currently promoting free trade during his Southeast Asia tour, presenting China as a stabilizing force against perceived U.S. protectionism. However, China is retaliating against U.S. tariffs by suspending exports of specific rare earth minerals and magnets, essential components in numerous industries, including U.S. defense technology. The CIA warns that the U.S. lacks the capacity to replace its rare earths supply from China, potentially threatening its defense capabilities as China implements export controls. Chinese chip traders are reporting a significant drop in orders due to escalating tariffs with the U.S., raising concerns about future economic prospects. Traders at China's Canton Fair note a reduced presence of U.S. buyers due to tariff concerns, although advancements in electronics are boosting sentiment towards products made in China. China is also making significant strides in technology. Curtail has introduced what it claims is the world's most powerful AI video generator, a rival to OpenAI's Sora, with over 22 million users globally. Ant Group is expanding its presence in healthcare with AI-driven AI doctors, built on its medical AI foundational model. Despite U.S. sanctions, Chinese AI unicorn Jipu is considering filing for an IPO this year, following DeepSeek's successful debut. Curtail, a leading EV battery manufacturer, is partnering with Sinopec to establish a nationwide battery swapping network. China continues to expand its financial and logistical influence. The London Metal Exchange has approved warehouses in Hong Kong, solidifying the city's position as a metals hub. Sphere Properties, a Hong Kong developer, is expressing confidence in mainland China and actively seeking retail investments in Shenzhen. China is also reportedly concerned about its reliance on Africa's resources, particularly as U.S. involvement in the region increases, potentially creating new risks. Shifting focus to the United States, President Trump's imposition of tariffs on China is straining negotiations on other critical issues and undermining company strategies to shift factory production from China to other countries. These tariffs are also impacting sectors like aerospace, with Boeing's stock decreasing following reports that China may block deliveries. Former National Security Advisor John Bolton claims that Trump is shredding credibility with allies, a situation that benefits China. Dategate, a Chinese e-commerce app, is experiencing a rise in U.S. App Store rankings amidst these trade tensions. President Trump has also asserted that China's talks with Vietnam are intended to undermine the U.S. India's stock market soared, adding $0.5 trillion to market capitalization in a day. The Sensex closed at 76,734.89, a 1578-point increase. And the Nifty 50 ended at 23,328.55, up 500 points. This surge was partly due to a temporary U.S. tariff exemption on electronics. Aegis Vopak Terminals gained SEBI approval for a yacht 3,500 crore IPO for loan repayment and capital expenditures. Goldman Sachs upgraded Axis Bank and PNB Housing Finance to buy and revised the SPI to neutral. Nuvama Research sees a favorable economic environment for Indian companies compared to 2008 or 2020. Domestic mutual funds increased their stake in Paytm to 13.1%. A normal monsoon is expected to positively impact the Indian economy and stock market. Axis Securities identified Coal India on GC and BPCL has top CSU dividend yield stocks for 525. Inflation in India fell to 3.34% in March, following RBI rate cuts that brought the policy rate to 6%. Despite its large workforce, India's manufacturing sector is not yet ready to fully replace China's. Apple is increasing iPhone production in India and using chartered cargo flights to transport them to the U.S. United States is considering tariffs on imported computer chips, chip-making equipment, and pharmaceuticals, impacting investor confidence. These potential tariffs exacerbate existing trade disputes, weakening the U.S. dollar. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index has fallen significantly this year, nearing its largest annual loss since 2017. Investors are increasingly drawn to the Eurozone, moving away from the U.S. dollar. The ongoing trade war between the U.S. and China may create new avenues for Russia. China's Huawei has introduced a new AI architecture designed to rival NVIDIA, demonstrating advancements in domestic computing capabilities despite trade pressures. Oil prices are unstable, influenced by US tariff policies and expectations of an ongoing market surplus. The U.S. government is contemplating imposing tariffs on imported semiconductors and pharmaceuticals. These tariffs would primarily target imports from China, India, and Europe. National security concerns are the driving force behind this potential action. A national security statute investigation is underway to evaluate the impact of these imports on domestic industries. The administration anticipates that tariffs on semiconductors will encourage companies to move their manufacturing operations to the United States. Simultaneously, worries are emerging that tariffs on drug imports might drive up costs. This could result in rationing and shortages of essential medications within the U.S. In other news, the Trump administration has frozen $2.20 billion in grants to Harvard University. This decision was made after Harvard declined to modify its diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. South Korea is substantially boosting its semiconductor industry with a $23 billion financial commitment. This investment aims to mitigate risks from potential tariff hikes on semiconductor imports under a possible future Trump administration. The new allocation marks a 25% rise from the previous year's $26 trillion won, around $19 billion, highlighting the country's resolve to strengthen its chip sector amidst global economic challenges. United Kingdom's government is bolstering its support for exporters facing challenges from international tariffs. Simultaneously, the nation is reducing its own tariffs on various imported goods to stimulate trade. Across the Atlantic, Senator J.D. Vance expressed confidence in the possibility of a future UK-US trade agreement, pointing to Donald Trump's positive view of Britain as a favorable element. Argentina is being hailed by Besant as a prime example of free market economics in Latin America. Shifting to Asia, Chinese factories in Vietnam are experiencing a surge in orders. This increase stems from American businesses seeking to expedite shipments, capitalizing on the 90-day suspension of U.S. tariffs. In the United States, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene strategically acquired stocks prior to President Trump's tariff pause and subsequently profited from the resulting market rally. Turning to Europe, President Trump is pushing for European nations to increase their imports of U.S. chicken and eggs. However, both the UK and the EU have reservations about American poultry, citing concerns over chemical washing processes. European markets, meanwhile, closed on a positive note on Tuesday. This optimism was fueled by hopes for a potential easing of President Trump's tariff policies. In Iraq, plans are underway to reduce the oil price in the federal budget, a response to the significant downturn in the market. Focusing on Japan, Nissan will curtail its production of the Rogue SUV within the country. This adjustment is a direct consequence of the newly imposed U.S. tariffs. Separately, Japanese regulators have instructed Google to cease its practice of mandating phone manufacturers to pre-install its applications. Malaysia mourns the passing of former Prime Minister Abdullah Badawi, who died at the age of 85. In Peru, an amendment to the forestry and wildlife law has sparked controversy. Environmental groups and indigenous organizations are voicing strong opposition, fearing potential devastation of the Amazon rainforest. Moving to Singapore, DBS Bank has been recognized as the leading company for career growth in LinkedIn's 2025 Top Companies list, marking its third consecutive year at the top. Singapore has announced a general election on May 3rd, dissolving parliament. This election will be Wong's first as Prime Minister. South Africa welcomes its new envoy amidst what has been described as a Trump storm. In Taiwan, simulations are being conducted to assess the potential effects of U.S. tariffs on the semiconductor industry. Taiwan also intends to engage in discussions with Washington. Back in the USA, the Trump administration denied access to an Oval Office news conference to an Associated Press reporter and photographer. The conference involved President Donald Trump and El Salvador President Nayib Bukele. Finally, in Venezuela, the ongoing crisis is being exacerbated by worsening inflation. President Maduro has responded by declaring an economic emergency. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.